What's going on, fantasy owners? Another edition of the Fantasy Football Stock Report coming at you for week number, oops, wrong way, 10. 10, there you go, of everyone's looking at me like, one? No. Or one? No. 10 of the 2012 football season. Hard to believe that we've already gotten to this point in the year, but here we are. My team now is going strong. 4 straight wins now. Hopefully you guys are doing just as well. This video is going to tell you the 5 guys that I think, one at each position, and then a couple more others to talk about, are going to be really, really good for your fantasy teams this week. There are a lot of strong teams on this week on buys, especially the Green Bay Packers. You're not going to have the greatness of Aaron Rodgers this week, unfortunately. So that's one big hit right there. So we're going to talk about some guys you can definitely plug in your lineups as bye-week fillers. So let's quickly dive right in. Don't forget also to check out the Facebook notes that I will link to on the page, the same ones that I use for this very show, and also the 5 to avoid video as well. So talk about guys that you probably don't want to mess with this week. So quickly, quarterbacks. I am in that very situation where I don't have the luxury of having Aaron Rodgers this week. Unfortunately, he's on the bye. So the quarterback to ride this week that I think would be a really nice plug-in is Carson Palmer of the Baltimore. He's playing Baltimore. The Oakland Raiders, I should say. He was amazingly the top fantasy quarterback last week. Palmer had 36 fantasy points last week. Obviously Baltimore's defense been banged up this year. A lot of tough things going on. But here's the thing. The Raiders are going to have to throw in this game because their running back situation is now so messed up. Obviously, Darren McFadden, high ankle sprain. Big shocker there that McFadden gets injured again. And also they said that Mike Goodson could have the same thing. So, are they really going to rely on Marcel Reese and Tywan Jones a lot in this game? I'm not sure. So I think Palmer's going to have to throw a lot. And the Ravens defense gives up a lot of passing yards. Coming into the week, 22nd against the pass. So, definitely this week, if you're an Aaron Rodgers owner like me and you need a bye week fill-in, Carson Palmer is definitely a guy that you can look at. He has the 8th easiest schedule going forward as well, so he's got some pretty decent matchups. Where if you play the matchups more often, you might be looking at some strong play from him. So definitely take a look at Carson Palmer this week. Other guys to look at this week. I know it's a short notice, but definitely if you got Andrew Luck this week, I think he's a #1 play this week going up against the Jaguars. I think Andrew Luck is just going to get better and better as the season progresses, plus his receivers. He's really starting to put up really strong fantasy numbers. The Colts are doing amazing right now. Hard to believe that they'd be 5-3 at this point in the season and contending for a wild card spot, but that's where they're at right now. Russell Wilson, another one this week that could have a decent game. He's going up against the Jets. I think he's a great bye week filler for you this week. Maybe a 1-2 play this week. Josh Freeman, you want to continue to ride his hot hand this week going up against that really kind of rough Charger secondary. I think he's a solid #2 play. And another one, Ryan Tannehill in Miami. Came back last week. The quad really wasn't a big issue for him against the Colts. Had 17 fantasy points. I think he's a #2 or a bye week replacement for the game with the Titans this week. As we all know, the Titans defense, not exactly cream of the crop. Running backs for the week. Well, I think it's safe to say that we don't need to mention Doug Martin anymore as kind of a surprise on this list anymore. He had his breakout week last week. I think it's safe to say that he's a must-start going forward. So let's talk about some other guys that are kind of under the radar. I think you can start any Steeler running back against Kansas City. Obviously, again, the Chiefs' D, not exactly strong this year either. But the big question again in Pittsburgh is who is going to get the bulk of the work. Mendenhall may come back this week. Isaac Redman got the start last week and looked awesome. Is Jonathan Dwyer still in the mix? We really don't know how the situation is going to shape up in Pittsburgh. So obviously, if you have either of these guys, or if you're a Mendenhall owner, you're kind of scratching your head wondering what's going on. You really need to monitor the situation really carefully. But whoever gets the start, I think, is a pretty safe option for a must-start against the Chiefs. The backup maybe could be a #2, could snag a touchdown. We'll see. Have to see what happens. But definitely, you're the main guy against Kansas City. Other guys to talk about with decent matchups this week. Um, Normally he's a must start anyway, but I think you're definitely starting Ray Rice against Oakland. I mean, come on. The Raiders just got carved up by Doug Martin, so I think this is a no-brainer, even though normally Rice is a no-brainer anyway. Considering what Martin did to the Raiders, I think you've got to definitely have Ray Rice in your lineups for this matchup. But speaking of the Raiders, I actually like Marcel Reese a little bit better than Tywan Jones. I know that I said that Palmer's going to have to throw, and he is, but still, the Ravens defense, not the same team that we saw earlier in the year, but obviously because of all the injuries. Reese is still going to get the bulk of the work, and he still might turn out a decent day for you. I kind of look at maybe a sneaky number 2 with some upside for you if you're looking for a running back play this week. You definitely want to start Reggie Bush against, again, Tennessee, and any Dolphin. Tannehill, Bush, I think definitely Brian Hartline is a look as a start this week. Maybe not Devon Best just yet, or Anthony Fasano because they're too inconsistent, but I definitely like those guys this week. You definitely want to start Reggie Bush this week as a solid number 2. And Chris Ivory of the Saints. The Saints running back situation, though, also is very clouded right now. Will Darren Sproles play this week? A lot of reports are saying that he's still going to be out with that hand issue. But, you know, Ivory got the bulk of the work last week and put up some decent numbers for you. I think you see him as a number 2, number 3 play with upside, but only if Sproles is officially ruled out. You want to monitor that situation. Not sold on Pierre Thomas, not sold on Mark Ingram. Those guys, again, are just way too hair-pulley for me to consider. Wide receivers. I mentioned these two guys last week, and I think I'm going to mention them again this week because, again, this matchup is just way, way too juicy. I think you're definitely starting both Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker for Denver against the horrid Carolina Panther defense. I mean, and last week, I know that Decker turned out to be a better overall option, and I've said that before, that you don't know when one of these guys is going to go off and then is going to take a back seat. Other weeks, they'll both perform well. I think this is one of those weeks where they're both going to have actually pretty decent games. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them did hit double digits in points, if each of them get a touchdown or two. But then again, it could be the opposite this week where Thomas goes off and Decker goes into the background. But I really doubt that happening because you can definitely throw on the Panthers. So I definitely see them as both pretty strong must-start options this week. Both definitely borderline 1-2 plays for you. Other guys to look at. A real sneaky play that I think, and I picked this guy up off of waivers, and I took a chance. This is a real flyer, but only if one of Andrew Luck's main targets down. Obviously, Reggie Wayne is Andrew Luck's main target, going back to the Colts. But Donnie Avery may not play this week because of a hip injury he suffered last week. And this is a short week. The Colts got to play Jacksonville tomorrow night in Jacksonville. So Donnie Avery might sit out this game. So if that happens, T.Y. Hilton takes on a much bigger role this week. And he had 16 fantasy points last week, played real nicely in Avery's absence. I really, really like Hilton as a sneaky number 2 play with serious upside if Avery is out. Now, Avery did practice in full today, from what I've read, but that still doesn't really tell us. He's going to be mostly a game time decision. I wouldn't take the risk on Avery. Even if he's out there in your league, I still wouldn't take the risk. Obviously, I like both receivers going forward because Andrew Luck is getting more and more involved with these guys all the time. But for this week only, I think T.Y. Hilton's going to have a big, big role. Obviously, still playing second fiddle to Reggie Wayne, but I think he'll still get plenty of looks. I like him as a sneaky number 2 play this week. I also like Mike Wallace this week going up against those same Chiefs. Antonio Brown, in all likelihood, is going to be out through with that high ankle sprain, so this only means more targets for Wallace. Normally, you start him anyway, but he's kind of been inconsistent this year with drop issues and things like that. He's been outplayed by Antonio Brown at times this season, and even Heath Miller. But I think this time around he's going to have a solid game for you. Speaking of the hot hand in Tampa Bay, obviously Josh Freeman, Vincent Jackson, but keep riding the hot hand of Mike Williams. He's been a touchdown machine of late. He's had 5 touchdowns this season already. I think he's a solid number 2 this week going up against that Charger secondary. And another one that could finally break out, I like, is speaking in that same game with Tampa Bay and San Diego, is Malcolm Floyd. I like him as a sneaky number 2, number 3 this week with some upside. The Tampa Bay secondary, not exactly elite by any stretch, so I think he could finally have a breakout week going up against the Bucks this week. A couple things I want to say real quick. Also, a quick wild card. I mentioned Brian Hartline. He's my wild card for the week going up against the Titans. I think he's finally come back. He was dropped by a lot of owners, myself included, after that breakout performance where it didn't work out. But he's starting to take advantage of some good matchups. I think he's a sneaky number 2 this week going against the Titans. I think, or even a bye week replacement for you. He's definitely back in the fold this week. Schedule might get tougher down the line, but I think he's an okay play this week. And this one, I guess now looking back, I even regret saying I told a lot of you guys last week to sit Trent Richardson. My bad. I had a fear as soon as I mentioned it and as soon as I posted the notes on Facebook, I kind of had a fear that I'd be wrong on that one. Well, I was. The Ravens defense, obviously not what it used to be. Richardson went off on him for 13 fantasy points in a CBS league, so I regret that one 100%. My bad. I believe in Trent Richardson now. I believe he is a must-start regardless of the matchup going forward. As long as his ribs don't give him any trouble, I think he's a must-start option for you going forward. He's clearly showing that he's going to be okay. So my bad on that one, guys. Don't sit Trent Richardson. And if I'm wrong on that one, okay, but it's just I don't think there's going to be a problem going forward with Trent Richardson. All right, too much Richardson. Moving on. Real quick, tight ends to watch this week. Going back to Oakland with their offense, Brandon Myers has become the kind of the new Kyle Rudolph when it comes to fantasy tight ends for a breakout guy. He had 17 points last week. I think he's a solid number 2 this week with upside going against that Ravens defense. He's become the scorer now. Again, granted, he could do the same thing and fall off completely like Kyle Rudolph has done. But you know, I think for this week, I think you roll with him as a safe number 2 play. If your number 1's on a bye or, you know, just looking for some depth, I think Myers is a good play for you. Owen Daniels of the Texans going up against the Bears. Look, the Texans, I'm going to say it right now, I mean, even though you're probably not going to afford to sit Arian Foster, I would really temper my expectations for him against Chicago. Chicago's been very stout against the run this year. So Matt Schaub's going to have to throw the ball a little bit. So Owen Daniels might get an end zone touchdown or 2, or red zone touchdown. So I like him as a solid 1 to 2 play this week for you. Antonio Gates is finally coming on of late, going up against that Tampa Bay secondary. I like him as a 1 to 2 play this week. Joel Dreesen again of Denver with the matchup against Carolina. That's just way too juicy. He caught all 4 of his targets last week. I like him as a number 2 with upside. And another guy, and again, I apologize to this guy too for not believing in him, but it's time to buy him. Dwayne Allen of the Colts. I know they were using him as more of a blocker at first, but now he's starting to get more involved in the offense, like Andrew Luck is doing everybody in the offense. Going up against the Jaguars, I think he's a sneaky number 2 play this week. Kobe Fleener still expected to be out with that shoulder injury, so Dwayne Allen not a bad play this week. All right, guys, those are the guys that you want to ride this week in order to win your fantasy week. Don't forget, again, to check out the Facebook notes that I post and the 5 to avoid video as well for guys you don't want to play this week to lead you in your Week 10 fantasy matchups. Thanks, guys, again for your patience and support, and we'll see you again next week. And check out the 5 to avoid video. Don't forget. Bye, guys.